Okay, welcome to Programming Rainbow. In this video, we'll continue the series of Yellow Snow in SDL2 and C++. This is the fourth video. You can go to github.com, Programming Rainbow, and this one is called Yellow Snow CPP SDL2. You can clone that repository, move inside of it, and this is the fourth video, so you will want to take the code that's in the source video. You probably want to delete that and copy the code from video 3 into there, because this is the fourth video. We're continuing on where we left off in the code of the third video. Otherwise, you'll be with the code from the 10th video, and that won't make sense. Okay, let me just show you the project that we're working on. It's the snowman. You can eat all the white snow, but not the yellow snow. If you eat the yellow snow, the game ends. You can press space to restart it. You can press escape to close it. We did an opening the window, we closed the window, we drew the background. This time we're going to make the player class. So we want to create a player, so I'm just going to make a new class. So this will be player.cpp, player.h, and I am going to pull in main. Player._h. And we'll define player_h. Okay, so we have made the render a shared object, and the reason why is because we're going to actually share it with the player class. So we got class player, and we have a public is going to be player. We'll just come back to that in a second. We are not going to worry about having a system deconstructor, because the smart pointers are going to take care of themselves. So the default one will work just fine. We are going to need an init method and a draw method to run any code that needs to happen when we create this class. And then also this will be able to draw itself. Need the void appear. Okay, so, and then in our private, we are going to have our shared pointer and our unique pointer. So our shared pointer is going to be the render, and our unique pointer is going to be the player image, the snowman itself. So we'll do the shared pointer, which is the SDL render. I'm just going to call it render. And then we have our unique pointer. And this one is going to be an SDL texture, just like we had before. And it's going to be SDL destroy texture as its custom deleter. Our declare type is going to be the SDL destroy texture. And this one's going to be called image. It's just the image of this player class. There's no other, image that's going to be holding. And we will have an SDL rect. And I will show you what happens if we don't use it. And I'm just going to call this rect because it's going to be the only rect. So pretty straightforward. So I'm going to fill this in a second, but we have an init method, a draw method. We have a couple private members here, which is our render, which actually we're going to get from game. And then it's going to have its own image that is dealing with. The reason why we need the render is because to load the image, we need the render, and also to draw the image, we need the render. So it's going to be holding on to its own version of the render, and the rectangle so we can display it correctly. We don't need this or this. Okay, so I don't want to I don't want to define the constructor because, again, I'm not going to do anything complicated in the constructor. It's going to be in the init method. So I'm going to use an initializer list. So I'm just going to put it here. And this is going to be the render. And it's just going to be, now the render is going to be passed in from here. So let's do that. The shared pointer, and it's going to be SDL render. And I can't call it render here because C++ will complain about it, talking about shadowing. I don't really consider this specific case shadowing, but they do. So I'm just going to call it new render. That's the way I'm, And so I'm going to put that new render here directly in. So it's just being passed directly into this. I don't need to set it as null pointer or anything. It's going to, when I instance this class, it's going to have it right away. But the image won't. So the image needs to be loaded. So this one's going to be null pointer. And the SDL destroy texture. And the rect we need to deal with. Right now, I'm not going to put anything in for this rect because I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. So we're just going to leave it blank for right now. It's going to be zeroed out, basically. An SDL rect is 4 ints. It's an X, a Y, a width, and a height. And they're just going to be zeros because of this curly brace constructor, however it's called in C++, I forget. So that should give us enough to work with. This is our class. So we don't need to really do anything with the constructor. We're not going to worry about a deconstructor because the smart pointers are going to take care of themselves. So we only need to worry about these two methods right here. So we're going to include the player.h. So we're going to do a quite simple thing. Instead of in load media, we're going to allow the player to load its own image. We could have also loaded it in load media and kept it in game class and had it as a shared pointer. But instead, I'm going to actually let the player just have its own image, just to show you how that's done as well. It's not really a big deal, but we can just copy the code that we've already used before because it's the same. So this init is going to be dealing with this. And we also need to, well, I'm going to show you what it looks like if we don't do this. But we will need the width and height from the texture. But I'm going to go into load media. And we've already loaded a texture before. So it's going to look exactly like this. Right here. There it is. And this one is going to be called image. And down here, we're checking if image is null or null pointer. And now the right here needs to be changed as well. So, I mean, that otherwise it would just load a smaller version of the background image or another version of the background image. But it's just called player.png. So that's what we're going to change it to. Okay, so we have player.png. That's been loaded now. And our draw. And we have access to the render because player has its own copy of render now. So void player, and this is going to be const again. I didn't set it. I need to fix that. It's not really a big deal, but just trying to do it is the best way I can. Draw. So it's going to be const. It's going to complain because I need to change it. And what we're going to do here, let me fix this const part first. Player H right here. Because this draw method doesn't need to change any part of the class. So nothing's going to be mutated in draw. So why have it the ability to be able to change things? Okay, so we know how to draw stuff, right? Because if we look into game, right here, we know how to draw something, right? So let's just copy this. And I'll go into player. And it's going to be the same, except the name of what we're drawing. This one's going to be image. Okay, so now it's going to look funny because the image is not the width and the height of the screen. So the snowman is going to be drawn really wonky, but I'm just going to show it first. So we still have null pointer, no pointer. We haven't populated the rect yet. We haven't done anything, but we are loading an image. We do need to add this into our game class. So the game is going to have this unique pointer. So it's taking care of itself. Unique pointer. And this one is going to be a player. And it's going to complain because I haven't pulled it in here yet. I'm just going to repurpose this. Player.h. So down here, player. And we can just call it, I think, player. It's fine, right? Okay, but up here, I'm going to go ahead and player. Now we have no custom deleter on this, on the player. It's just using its own deconstructor. So we don't need any custom deleter going on at all. So it's just null pointer. So now we have our player here. Player here is being initialized to null pointer. In our game, it's going to be here. We're just going to reset that pointer. We're going to do a reset on it, but we need to make a new player and we need to pass in the renderer. In the deconstructor, I do want to reset this and I'm going to separate it out from that stuff. This player reset, just to make sure it's freed its memory. In it now, I'm going to instance this. So I'm going to say this player reset. I'm going to say new player. So I need to pass in the render. So because remember, the render is shared. I'm keeping a local copy of it in there. So I need to pass in the render. Okay, so this is just creating initializing class with its constructor, which is basically nothing except that initializer list. So the actual loading of the image is happening in the init method. So we need to call that. Because if anything fails in the init method, I want it to be able to shut itself down correctly. And if I put it into the constructor, that wouldn't happen. If anything fails during the constructor, it will not shut down correctly. I think that's a design flaw in C++. It's not really, I don't think they're doing the right thing. But, you know, if you know C++, you know that like half of the language is a design flaw. So there we go. That's going to bring in the loading of the image. So we have the image loaded. Now we need it to draw. So what we can do is down here in the draw, and we're going to put it underneath. We're drawing the background, and then on top of it, we're drawing the player. So top to bottom is back to front. So this is behind, this is in front of whatever this is. So it'll be this player, and we already have the method for it. It's draw. We don't have to pass anything in it. It's got its own copy of the render. Okay. And that should do something. Now it's going to draw the snowman really wonky if I haven't made any mistakes, that is. Yeah, perfect. This is exactly what I was hoping to see. The snowman's drawn, but it's stretched to the entire size of the screen because we didn't create a rectangle. Okay. So the way the rectangles works is there's two rectangles. There's the source rectangle and the destination. So think about this. The snowman is its own image that I've loaded. Yeah. If I want to use that entire image, imagine if I just wanted to use the eye. Imagine if the snowman image was actually a bunch of different snowman images, a sprite sheet, and the eye was just the part I wanted to use. I could take a rectangle of just where the eye is, and that would be the source rectangle. I don't want to use the entire source of the snowman. I just want to use the part that's its eye. So that's the source rectangle. Now for this project, I'm going to use null pointer for the source. I want to use the whole picture. So I do want to use the whole picture, but I don't want the whole picture to be stretched to the whole window, to this whole window. I want it to be the correct size that it should be. So that's the destination rectangle. So the source rectangle, I want the entire image, which is, I'm going to use null pointer. The destination rectangle, I want to know what is the width and the height of the snowman so it can be shown correctly. So we need to get the width and the height. So that's a new function call here. And right here, it is going to be SDL query texture. Since we have a texture, not a surface, we need to use this. And this one, we need a pointer to a texture. We need format, access, width, and height. Now, format and access we don't care about, so we can just use null pointer for both of those. But width and height are what we want. So what I'm going to do is they both want pointers. So I'm going to send in the address to the rectangle's width and the rectangle's height. And this function is going to populate those for me. And then I will have a rectangle to make it display correctly. I'm going to grab this function right here, and I am going to check if this fails. So 0 on success is what I'm looking for. Sorry, let me close this. This is going to be in player, in the init. So this function right here, I want to know if this fails. So if it's anything other than 0, it's failed. So I'm going to say if. I'm just going to wrap it and do that. Now I'm going to fill in this stuff. So the texture is going to be the image, but remember it's a smart pointer and we're dealing with a C function, so we need to unwrap it. So it's going to be this image.get. And the other two we don't care about. They're null in C, null pointer in C++, which is actually 0 under the hood. Okay, I'm just fixing these up here. Okay, so these two we care about. Now we have a rectangle already. It's part of our class here. It's called rect. Now a rectangle, let me just look it up here. SDL rect. A rectangle is just a struct that has X, Y, width, and height, all ints. That's all it is. So it's just 32-bit signed int X, Y, width, height. And what we want is width and height. So here, and we need to pass in the address to it because it's again C style. So this is going to be the address of this rect.w and the address of this rect.h. And we missed a thing here, comma. Okay, so that's the function. Now, if it fails, I'm just going to do this right here. I'm going to say error querying texture. Error querying texture, and this is from SDL. Yeah. So that should populate our width and height. Okay, I'm just going to show this real quick and then we're going to move. So the snowman is going to be in the top left of the screen when we do this. Okay, so we didn't use it. We didn't use it right here is where we use it. So this is going to be this rect. And I'm not going to compile the whole thing. I'm just going to tell it to run here. Okay, so our snowman's in the top left of the screen. So the problem is how can we get our snowman in the center of the screen? What we could do is we can take the width, we could subtract the width of the snowman and then divide that by 2 and the width of the screen. So if we go with this rect.x, we can say that if we take the width of the screen and we took half of that, we took the width of the snowman and we subtracted half of that, we would get where the left side of the image is, which is the x. So I'm just going to take window width minus this rect.w and divide that by 2. And that is where I'm going to set the x position. And the y position, I think I have this set in the main. So I just figured out what the number is. It's a magic number. I just put 374 to make the snowman on the ground. Const expr, this is int player y equals, and this is just a magic number. I just figured out where it was by trial and error, 374. And what I'm going to do is in the class, I'm going to initialize the rect to that. So I'm just going to put 0, and then I'm going to put player y, because this is x, y, and then width and height. So I'm just going to go 0, 0. Something like that. Is that right? That's not right. There we go. Okay. So now the player, this should be setting the rect when the class is instanced, but when the initial method initializer, the width and the height are being populated in this right here in query texture, and the X is being dealt with here. So now it should be in the center of the screen. The snowman. And it's not. Well, I'm going to deal with this first. This Y is needs to be adjusted. 76. I don't know if you can see it in the video, but it's just a little bit off. Okay. Now we have the problem of the X. Not sure why the X is being an issue. I don't know what fixed it, but something fixed it. Let me just cover this real quick. So I'm creating a player and I am passing in the shared render. I'm storing it immediately in the render, which is down here, a shared pointer to render. It's coming from game class. The image is, I'm just setting it to null pointer and it's custom deleter because it is a unique pointer. So I'm just doing the same. The rectangle, I'm actually setting just the height here initially, just in its initializer list. And then the init function will set the rest later. You could also do it here as well. It doesn't really matter. But since it's like a static number, I'm just setting it there. So this load texture, nothing new is happening here. We know exactly what this is doing from the last video. This is a new function, this query texture. We don't care about these two parameters, but we are getting the width and the height, and we're storing them in the rect.w and the rect.h. And we've already seen this error message, so nothing new is happening here. I'm taking the width of the screen, I'm cutting that in half, taking the width of the snowman, cutting that in half, and subtracting it, and that's giving me the left side, which is the x. So width minus snowman width divided by 2 is the x to put him in the middle of the screen. And the y is just guess, you know. And then when I render copy, this is exactly the way we've seen before. I'm using the whole source image, which is the snowman texture, but I'm using a rectangle to display it to the renderer, which is the correct width and the height. And then I've chosen my Y and I've figured out mathematically the center of the X to display it correctly. So I hope that's everything. Thanks for watching and have a good day. Bye.